Kristen, I was thinking about how to introduce you. You do so many things for so many people. I'm just going to introduce you as a badass because I love the way that you approach selling. And what we were talking about before I formally hit the record button here was this idea of selling as a craft. And I've always approached it that way. And I think there's a reason I've always approached it that way because the more I do it, the more I learn. It doesn't feel like a book you can read and you're just kind of up to speed on it.
Hmm.
I guess to start, who was the first person that showed you that this was more than just an instruction manual to be followed?
That is a smart question. That really came out of my first tech sales job where I realized very quickly that I was going to need help beyond what my manager could give me. I had great managers and they had been AEs and they were really good. They just were like every manager pressed for time and didn't have the time that they wanted to be able to coach. And so I hired a sales coach. Um, his name was Mike, and I'm not going to say his last name because he's retired and and he won't want to get hit up by 50 people asking him for this. But he had been VP of sales at the company that where I eventually got that tech sales job. He wasn't there anymore, but he had worked for small startups. Gone through exits. He had done startup consulting, and he had worked for really large companies. And just in talking to him, like we did coaching, I think every week for a while, and it was just hearing him talk through 20 years of experience where I was like, oh, this is a journey. Like this is not like this is not just like learning to stamp out a widget and then you can just rinse and repeat. Like there's definitely repeatable things, but it was
Hmm.
just something that um that really is a craft, and which intrigued me because I it's not that I have ADD, but like I am very task oriented. And when I learn a job about like 80% of the way, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then
Yeah.
move on. But sales is like every conversation is different. Every client is different. I think that's why it's kept my attention this long.
Well, it's funny. I like to joke that I learned to sell by drinking beer. And, my first coach,
It's a better
mentor,
story.
manager, yeah, well, it's a better tagline. It's better clickbait, that's for sure. But,
Yeah.
my first mentor, manager, coach is retired now as well. So I won't mention his name, and I never have for other reasons that people in the know will understand how tongue-in-cheek that reference is. But um, we would meet in the morning. We'd grab a cup of coffee somewhere. He'd hop
I
in my
thought you were going to
car. I'd
say
hop in
we
his
met in
car.
the morning and drank beer.
No, hold on. I'm getting to it. And we'd go make our calls. And then at the end of the day, and there'd be time that we'd discuss things, what just happened, what's going on, what do we have next, kind of just going through a good sales day. And but then at the end, we'd usually grab a beer somewhere and just talk about what happened that day.
Yeah.
And the clickbait is the beer, right? But the time that we spent together
Yeah.
is key. And
Hmm.
the thing that I noticed was, and he always said this, he's like, there's no cookbook for this, Jeff.
Yeah.
I can't just tell you how to do it. Each situation is different. Remember how I said one thing to the first person we called on today? And did you see how they reacted? What happened and how could we have done that different? Remember the second call of the day? I said the same thing. That person reacted in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And so much of the learning is the context that you get
Hmm.
out of it. And I think because everything is drilled into us in an online course format, because everybody's trying to systematize stuff so we make sure we don't leave any stones unturned,
Yeah.
it creates the impression that you can just paint this pretty picture by numbers and end up with a reasonable piece of art. And it just doesn't happen that way. And you do a lot with reps and with teams on discovery. You talk about deal doubling discovery. I don't think there is a more valuable, a more impactful way to approach this as a craft as you do with discovery. I've always thought that, or said that people rush through discovery to get to the selling part. And what you and I believe is that discovery is the selling part.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it to you. I mean, what is it about discovery that people screw up, and how do you direct them to start getting better? Because it's a craft. You don't just get better.
Well, the first thing is like we were talking about earlier, which is this idea that discovery is a call, which
Mm,
like we have first calls, but especially in enterprise, we are going to have multiple first calls with multiple executives, multiple departments, and discovery is a process that happens throughout, like throughout the sale and even post sale. Like we should always be finding out more. One of my VPs at Outreach used to say, like for every call, if she was gonna join, she would ask like, what is the outcome that you want for this call, and what are the two things you can't leave this call without knowing? And that's where I was like, I'm a big fan of repeatable systems. Not that there is a cookbook, but I think that there are fundamental skills
Hmm.
that we have to learn, and then we can iterate on those. I think like I'm definitely not a chef at all, but what I see is there's some little pithy saying that says like you have to learn before you iterate, like learn the rules to break the rules kind of a
Sure.
thing. Like there's like chefs learn how the right way to chop, right? And then after that, like after they learn the right way, then they can iterate and do their own thing. But so to me, little things like little systems like that, like what's the one outcome I want, what are the next steps I'm suggesting, what are the two things I can't leave this call without knowing, like just little things like that, so that form the foundation, um I think are super helpful. And then like we were talking about, like I finally after 10 years kind of formulated thoughts around how to frame up a first call, we using that EMT kind of methodology, because it's a shame that I don't think I've ever in any company I've ever worked for been taught like how to have a good discovery call that wasn't product focused.
Mm.
And so to me, like I needed a translatable way to be able to approach a discovery call that would work for any context, any executive, any product, because a good conversation is a good conversation.
Well, so tell me more about EMT. And I've got a health and medical background, so EMT to me means emergency medical technician.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I know there are a lot of reps who need help with discovery urgently. So I'm sure there's a pun or a play there, maybe even a better one than I just came up with. But the idea that you need a framework, but if it comes across as too forced or if you
Oh yeah.
stick too rigidly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, is your discovery an interview or is it an interrogation? Because your
Mm-hmm.
prospect can tell the difference,
A hundred
right?
percent.
How do
Yep.
you navigate that difference? Because we want to processize things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because process it identifies the things that need to happen in order for us to move forward. That is the science of selling. The
Mm-hmm.
art of selling is accomplishing those things without making it feel like a process, right? Or making it feel like a science. What, how do you navigate that with EMT? How does it give you the structure while also giving you enough leeway to
Mm-hmm.
to move within it?
EMT, like that's exactly what I meant, was emergency medical technician. And it actually came about from a presentation I was doing at an SKO where they sold to like first responders. And
Oh,
so I was trying to
perfect.
put it in a way that would be meaningful to them. But then as I was thinking about it, I was like, prospects are in pain, right? Like people that are
Mhm.
hurting like need an EMT. So I was like, this is actually workable for, lots of other scenarios. And so the E is excavate pain. And like the idea of excavate is digging deeper, right? Like digging beyond surface. And so, and to me, like one of the best ways to do that is what my first sales trainer called the menu of pain. And it's just basically a funny way of saying multiple choice, where you lay out like three things that people in that role that you hear that they struggle with, so that they know. It gives us some credibility, and it also um, helps folks know like they don't need to educate us on the 101 of what they do, which is a relief. It's very different than starting the call with like, so what do you guys do?
Right.
Like, so tell me about your role. No, no. Versus getting on the call and saying, hey Jeff, it's great to meet you. I appreciate you carving out some time. Like, I talk with sales leaders all day long, or if we want to use like not go to market tech, I talk with chief legal officers all day long, and what they generally seem to be struggling with are ways to collaborate with in-house and outside counsel, ways to be able to work more efficiently while like doing more and then like being able to like systematize their process so everyone knows what happens. But I don't know, like how much of that sounds like your world? What did I miss that you're focused on? So it's like I'm signaling that I at least have a beginner's understanding of
Right.
what you do. And then I don't need to be 100% right. In fact, I shouldn't be. Number one, it will be difficult for me to be 100% right. But number two is then there's this psychological principle called correcting the record, where people feel
Mm,
compelled to correct us, and they love to people love to correct people. They especially
right.
love to correct salespeople, and it's when they correct us that we really get like the gold, where they're like, yeah, number one, yeah, kind of. I know that's a thing in our industry, but really for us, and then it's like, oh, then we should be note
Yeah.
taking everything they say after that. So
But
so that's like the first, that's like how I like to frame up the first thing. And then based on what they say, like is applicable to them, then because I was a teacher, I think of things like teacher terms. You know, like those worksheets you used to get where it was like that you have a word bank of like, here's all
mhm,
the possible words you can use. I like to have a question bank where so it's not a formulaic, like let me walk you through all of these questions, but it's like here are 15 questions that I can pick from, that I can draw on, that will take us down deeper into the conversation that we've started. For me, the best way that I learned those was like we learn drills in sports. So it's muscle memory. Like I would write those questions on cards and then I
sure.
would stick them on my computer. And every morning I would drill myself on those just for 5 minutes before I started. Just because the more you say them out loud, the more you hear yourself saying them, the more natural it sounds, the more conversational. And
Hmm.
then it's just muscle memory. They're top of mind whenever they say, "Oh, well, really, this collaborating, with outside counsel is really some of the hardest things we do." Like, okay, could you walk me through what that sounds like, what that looks like for you? Can you tell me about the ripple effects that's having on the business? Like those are two questions that I've just drilled myself on over and over and over.
I've got so much that I could add to that and so many thoughts that you've kind of, you got my brain going this morning, but like what about the EM or what about the
Yeah,
M and the T, right? So
yeah,
I love the excavating the pain. And when
yeah,
I think excavating, I think large, I think wide. I don't think an inch deep and a mile wide. I think really deep and substantially wide at the same time, right? So we've got a certain amount of focus here, but we're not
yeah.
leaving stones unturned. Where do the M and the T come in?
Yeah. So if we're starting with excavating and then following their lead on what they say, they're trying to accomplish, that's the meat of the call, right? And so it's like the talking to the menu of pain and then using second level questions to kind of fill out the and inform the if it's a 30-minute call, that's 20 minutes,
Sure.
right? And then the M and the T come in the last 10 minutes. The M is match their urgency and T is teach them to buy. So after 20 minutes, then I can say, hey Jeff, it's been a great conversation thus far. I appreciate you kind of walking me through some of this. It sounds like there might be a way we can help, but I find that people join calls like this for one of three reasons. One, they're in education mode. They're just looking at tools that are available. Number two, they have a serious problem that frankly they needed solved 6 months ago. Or number three, they have something, it's painful. They're probably going to do something about it in the next year, but it's not terribly urgent. It's not a C-level priority. Just curious where you would kind of put yourself on that spectrum. And I'm asking because I never want to be the one to chase anything. If today was education mode, that's fine,
Hmm.
like allowing them to self-select and allowing for the fact that they can give us a negative response. Like I'm just looking, right? Like what do we say when we go into a department store, even when we are clearly looking for one thing? I'm just looking,
Yeah.
right? Like so giving them that, and then the teach them to buy is like we ask about their kind of urgency level because that informs what next steps look like. If they are just looking around, it may not make sense to meet again right the next week. That it may be a waste of our time and just crap in our pipeline. That doesn't mean it doesn't need to be nurtured. It doesn't mean there aren't next steps. It just means it's not a deal with legs.
It's so interesting. And I love the idea that you give your prospect an out. It's like, hey, look, you would not be alone if you were just tire kicking, right? The
Yep.
Sandler people gave tire kickers such a bad name that, it's like, oh, I don't want to waste my time with anybody who isn't perfectly BANT qualified and ready to buy. And it's like, no, look, I'm a salesperson. I love talking about how I help people. And I'm going to get better from this conversation because you're going to give me insight into a problem that if you have it,
100%.
other people have it too. This is a call worth taking because I'm going to learn something. Hopefully, you learn something too. But just curious, where are you? And it's okay if you're anywhere.
Yep. Yep.
Right? And giving people the flexibility to tell you that, yeah, I just wanted to look around. I'm way, I'm intrigued by your tech and I want to see how you
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
I,
Yeah.
or, you know what, we have our building is on fire right now and we need something immediately. And this is exactly it, or this isn't it, I mean, whatever
Yep.
that is.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I don't want to gloss over is what you mentioned last, which is you have to train them how to buy or teach them how to buy.
Yeah.
Our prospects are begging to be led. They know
Yeah.
they have a problem. They came to you because you're an EMT and you can help them with their pain, but they don't know what they need to do. They're hoping
No.
that you have some insight that you can share that will guide that decision-making process. And too
Yep.
many salespeople, beside the ones who don't know how to do any good discovery, but they just assume, and I've been guilty of this in the past, just assume that, well, you know what's next, right? You're going to lead this
Exactly.
conversation,
Yeah.
right? You're going to lead this process, right?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen. And you can't
It,
close a deal if you don't know what to
no.
suggest.
No, because like in our, it's not that our buyers aren't smart. They're very smart people. And it's not that salespeople aren't smart either. It's just that there's very little training around like this kind of like just basic like problem oriented language versus we like places now teach us all about the product.
Sure.
Um, and so, but teaching them to buy is just an acknowledgement that our buyers are experts in how to do their job. They are not an expert in how to buy our thing. They will be much better served if rather than saying at the end of a call, well, Jeff, how would you like to proceed? No, like that's an essay question which no one likes. And you're like, I
Right.
don't know. I've never, this is not something I do here. Or like the last time I bought software was 2 years ago, or maybe never if I'm new to this role or whatever, versus saying, okay, Jeff, it sounds like this is a fairly large problem and if we sounds like we may be able to help. We probably need to dig a little deeper, maybe go in depth with more of a conversation and then a demo. So typically what would happen from here is we would meet next week and either do just a demo for you, or sometimes that sometimes it's better if you bring in other stakeholders, like legal ops is typically involved at this point, sometimes a chief of staff, but your organization may be different. Is there a different step that would make more sense, or would it be make sense now that we have calendars open to just get that scheduled, right? I've said, here's a couple things that in my experience, typically what other people do is this. And also, you may know that you have to do something different. We may have to talk to IT before we can have a conversation at all. They may have to
Hmm.
vet an integration, or we have to be SOC 2 or whatever. So we're guiding. We're giving multiple choice and then leaving it open in case they do know something else has to happen. Um, but we have to help people understand like how even not even how to buy, but like what are this how do we do the steps that help us arrive at a good decision, whatever
Hmm.
that means.
So many ways to do that. So many right ways to do that. I think the only wrong way to do it is assume that it's going to happen on its own.
Well,
Um,
and I think like we especially early in our careers, like kind of we get freaked out by people with executive titles and we think like, oh my God, they're VP, CXO, like they're so smart and they know all these things. They do know these things. They do know a lot of things, but it's not, they have not majored in how to do our thing. And so like
right.
our job is to help them learn to like what are good steps to evaluate, and then like what are the steps that we can help you with so that you can apply that to what you know about your business. But I think we sometimes ascribe them too much credit, like they don't sit around thinking about how to buy software.
Right. Right. Um, so many things that you can share, so many things that you can help with. I've enjoyed our conversation and our time has flown by. And we're up against the clock right now, but you've got a course, actually a cohort that you're starting really today as we're talking about this. Where can people learn about it, and what will people take away from it?
I'm doing a weekly live coaching group because I think that is what every seller I've talked to wants more of, is just being
Mhm.
able to talk through, like, this is the deal I'm facing that's ghosting. This is, I want to know how to structure, how should I divide up my territory in Q1? So just doing that live weekly. The enterprise sales accelerator is what I'm calling it, because it's geared towards folks that are doing upper mid-market enterprise at complex deals. And they can just look at my LinkedIn page. There's a link there to be able to find out more information. But I'm so excited because, like, one-on-one coaching is not always financially a great decision for people as they start their career. But like, so that group can be a great way to like get some help without, having to make an investment like you're already a strategic seller.
Right. Yeah, that one-on-one time is awesome. The mentorship that you and I have both experienced isn't readily available out there. And I would say that it is largely, if not completely, responsible for the arcs of our respective careers versus what
100%,
the average seller gets.
thousand
But it's
percent.
also really expensive. So how do
Yep.
you dip your toe in the water? How do you get halfway there? Well, basically split the cost with a small group of people who
Yep.
also will have the beauty of small group coaching is that someone might be 6 months ahead of where you are and ask a question that you already have the answer to because you heard someone answer it,
Mhm.
when you get to that point in your
Yeah.
career. So,
Yeah.
what a cool program. And I hope people go and check it out. So, Kristen, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your wisdom. And yeah, people can find you on LinkedIn and check out the Enterprise Sales Accelerator.
Yeah, thanks for this. I love anytime we get a chance to sit down and talk. We should do this more. And like, yeah, because I think there's a few people that I really look up to as far as like just their approach is always spot on, and you're definitely one of those people. So
Ah,
I appreciate even just having a conversation.
thank you for saying that. Send me an invoice. We'll see you soon.
All right, see ya.